Okay, so next standard is investment analysis, recommendations and actions, and these are three sub-standards within it. First substandard is diligence and reasonable basis. It says that whenever you are giving a recommendation, you should perform proper analysis. You should perform proper research. You should exercise diligence, independence, and thoroughness. So you cannot just make a recommendation without any substantial research or without any analysis. You should have done reasonable. You should have exercised diligence, and you should have independently performed sufficient research to support your recommendation, and you should have a reasonable and adequate basis to support the recommendation or research which you are coming up with. And so that means that whenever you are performing the analysis or doing your research, you should look at multiple information sources, that is companies operating and financial history, current stage of the industry's business cycle, mutual funds fee structure, output and potential limitations of quantitative models, quality of the assets included in securitization, appropriateness of selected peer group. So, and in addition to this, any other factors which are relevant before you form a recommendation. Secondly, so when you are doing your research or doing your analysis, sometimes you may get information directly. Sometimes you may get research reports from other organizations or third-party research reports. So you can use secondary third-party research reports, but when you are using them, you should make sure or you should ensure that the assumptions that are used by those parties are sound or are accurate. You should know that they have performed rigor of the analysis. They have performed rigorous analysis, and you should know that date and timelines of the research are accurate. It is timely. It is relevant for now for your research, and evaluation of the objectivity and independence of the recommendation in that report. So you can use third-party report, but when you use third-party report or third-party research, you should test for all these factors. Quantitatively oriented research, so you should consider scenarios outside those typically used to assess downside risk. So you can, in addition to a base case which you are giving, you should also test that what can go worse or what can be the different scenarios, downside scenarios or negative scenarios. Selecting external advisors and sub-advisors. So you can also select external advisors or sub-advisors, but when you are selecting them, you should review the advisor's established code of ethics, and you should know that and analyze whether that advisor is ethical enough or not. You should understand advisor's compliance and internal control procedures, assess quality of published return information, and review advisor's adherence to the strategy. So that means you can use third-party research, but when you use third-party research, you should check for these factors. You can use external advisors, but when you use external advisors, you should check for these factors. And you should not rely on one scenario. You should do a research. You should come up with different scenarios in your recommendation. Moving on, group research and decision making. So a lot of time research is done in groups. Let's say this is a group of 4 analysts who are doing this research. If let's say others or the majority is agreeing on a buy recommendation, but you think that the recommendation should be sell, you can still align with the buy recommendation, or you can still have your name published on the report. But that means even if you have a different thought and different recommendation, you can still go with the recommendation suggested by other analysts part of the team. But you should know or you should ensure that this recommendation also have reasonable basis. That is, it has some logic behind it. Otherwise, if this is not the case and you think that they are just giving a wrong recommendation and that is unethical or doing something unethical, then you should dissociate yourself with the activity. Otherwise, as long as it has reasonable basis, it can be opposite to your own thought or your analysis or your recommendation, but you can still go with it and you can have your name published on the research. Villiers is the research analyst responsible for following company acts. All the information he has accumulated and documented suggests that the outlook for company new product is poor. Outlook is poor, so the stock should be rated as weak hold. So he has done his analysis. Based on his own analysis, he thinks that stock should be weak hold. During lunch, he overhears a financial analyst from another firm whom he respects offer opinions, whom he respects, and that analyst offer opinions that conflict with Villiers' forecast and expectation. So he overhears some other analyst who is very positive about it, and Villiers actually respects that analyst and thinks that analyst is right. So what Villiers do is that Villiers come back to office and change it from weak hold to buy, strong buy. So why did he change it? He changed it because he think that someone else has a buy recommendation who is a good analyst. So he changed his recommendation as well. So this is violation. Why? Because he does not have reasonable basis for it. Even if he wants to change it, he should do additional research. And based on research and analysis, if he finds out that it should be changed, then he should change it. Otherwise, he should not. Whatever the recommendation is, that needs to be backed by some analysis and research. It cannot be based on hearing someone else say something. Violated standards, correct, by failing to distinguish between fact and opinion. No, there is no fact and opinion here. Violated these standards, correct, because he did not have a reasonable and adequate basis, correct. So you should not only know that there is a violation, you should also know what is the reason for violation. When we say fact and opinion, so remember, that will come in communication with client. So what is fact and opinion? So fact and opinion means that standards say that we should distinguish between fact and opinion. If there is an opinion, you should mention it as opinion. If there is fact, you should mention it as fact. So for example, I think that company will pay a dividend in future. This is my opinion. Company hasn't announced it. So I should state it as the opinion. I should say, in my opinion, company will pay a dividend in future, or company is expected to pay a dividend in future. I cannot say that company will pay a dividend. I should, if I am saying will pay, I should mention it as my opinion. Otherwise, I should say it is will expected, or there are chances, or anything like that. So I cannot state an opinion as a fact. Communication with clients and prospective client. So your level of communication should be dependent on understanding of client. If client is let's say have a very good knowledge of finance and terminologies, then you can use finance terminologies or jargons. If you think client does not have any knowledge of these jargons or these finance terminology, then you should make it easier for the client, and you should communicate in a way that client understand. Also, you should distinguish between fact and opinion. Scott works for a regional brokerage firm. He estimates that Walton Industries will increase dividend by $1.5 a share during the next year. It is his estimate. He realizes that this increase is contingent on pending legislation that would, if enacted, give Walton substantial tax break. The US, so this is dependent on something else happening. The US representative for Walton's home district has told Scott that although she is lobbying hard for the bill and prospects for its passage are favorable, concern of the US Congress over the federal deficit could cause the tax bill to be voted down. So he does not currently know whether a tax break will be given or not. So if a tax break happens, then he estimates a dividend. But he is not sure if tax break will happen or not. It might be the case that no tax break happens. So there is no surety about it. Walton Industries has not made any statements about a change in dividend policy. This is again an estimate. This is not a change in policy by Walton. It hasn't yet announced it. As Scott writes in his report, so this is an expectation of Scott. We expect Walton's stock price to rise. They can expect it, that is right, by at least $8. This is an expectation, correct? A share by the end of the year. Because why are they expecting it? Because the dividend will increase by 1.5. This is wrong. They cannot say dividend will increase. They say that because we expect the dividend to increase, investors buying the stock at the current time should expect to realize a total return of at least 15% on the stock. Scott violated these standards, yeah, right? Why? Because he used material inside information? No. Scott violated inside standards? Yes, because he failed to separate opinion from fact. So not only knowing the violation is enough, you should also know what is causing the violation. Moving on, record retention. So members and candidates are required to retain records for future reference. If there are no other regulatory standards, then CFA Institute recommends, remember recommends, not a requirement, at least a 7-year holding period. Remember, this is recommendation, this is not requirement. Documentation is the firm's property. You must not rely on memory or materials created at the previous firm. Cannon has been working from home on weekends and occasionally saves correspondence with clients and completed work on her home computer. Because of worsening market conditions, Cannon is one of the several employees released by her firm. She has been fired or released. While Cannon is looking for a new job, she uses the files she saved at home. So those files which were saved at home, although she saved it at home, although she worked from home, but that are the property of the firm for which, or the employer for whom she worked. She is using those files for to request letter of recommendation from former clients. So this is wrong. She cannot use those files without permission from the employer. She also provides prospective clients of some of the reports as examples of her abilities. Cannon is violating the code and standards, correct, because she did not receive permission from her former employer to keep or to use files after employment. 6 is conflict of interest. Within this, there are 3 substandards. Disclosure of conflict means that you should disclose any conflict of interest. Disclosure means disclosure to clients as well as disclosure to employers. Disclosure to client can include disclosing broker, dealer, market making activities, disclose board service on any company or organization, disclose actual ownership of stock in the companies you recommend. So if you have a buy recommend on a company, maybe you also own stock of that company yourself. You should disclose it. Disclose compensation and bonus structure must be updated in case of significant change. Disclosure to employers, give employer enough information to judge the impact of conflict, take reasonable steps to avoid conflicts and report these if occur. Example, Smith is a financial analyst with XYZ brokerage firm. She is preparing a purchase recommendation on JNI Corporation. Which of the following situations is most likely to represent a conflict of interest? Smith frequently purchases items produced by JNI. This is not a conflict of interest. So maybe you are covering a consumer goods company and you buy its toothpaste and consume it. That is not a conflict of interest. XYZ holds for its own account a substantial common stock position in JNI. So the brokerage firm itself has a strong position in this company or holds a stake or holds shares of this company. So this is a conflict of interest because when the firm itself holds shares, then firms might get biased towards issuing a favorable recommendation. So B is your answer. Second substandard is priority of transaction. So we have already discussed that priority of transaction should be given to the client first, and then comes your interest. So first comes client. Within client, you should not give priority to one compared to another. But let's say that you have a family member, and that family member, so this is portfolio, you are a portfolio manager, this is company X, in which you are a portfolio manager. You have a family member Y. This family member opens up an account with X, and now is your client through X. So although he or she is a family member, but still she is now your client. So you should treat him or her in the same way as you treat other clients. So you should not disadvantage him or her. Although it is a related account, but it should be treated like just like others. It will not be considered like personal transaction. You should not give other clients a priority over this. Personal transactions include those where you are beneficial owner. Personal transactions can be undertaken after clients and employers have had adequate opportunity to act. If family accounts are client accounts, they should be treated like other client accounts. Do not act on information about pending trades for personal gain. For example, a client places a buy order. Now this trade is pending. It will be executed after some time, but you buy it before the client for yourself. You know that when this order is published, price will go up, so you have bought it yourself. That is not allowed. Recommendation: limit participation in IPOs, place restrictions on private placement, establish blackout periods, reporting requirement, disclose holdings in which employee has beneficial interest, provide duplicate confirmations, pre-clearance procedures, disclosure of policies. Suppose a portfolio manager for a local investment advisory firm is planning to sell a portion of his personal investment in investment portfolio to cover the cost of his child's academic tuition. Rose wants to sell a portion of his holdings, but his firm recently upgraded the stock to buy. So firm has a buy recommendation, but Rose is selling it. So there seems to be a problem. That is, you are giving recommendation of buy to others but selling yourself. So should this be allowed? This can be. Why? Because she is selling for a purpose, to cover the cost of child's academic tuition. So this is her investment, and she wants to liquidify her investment for some purpose, and so she can do it. Based on his firm's buy recommendation, Rose cannot sell the shares because he would be improperly prospering the inflated recommendation. As he has a reason, he can. Rose is free to sell his personal holdings once his firm is properly informed of his intention. And last is referral fee. Referral fee is, let's say there is a client. Let's say you are a portfolio, you are a consultant, or let's say advisor, and there is a, let's say, a brokerage house, and this is client. Client comes to you for advice, and you refers client that when client trades, you say that when you give the advice. In addition to that, you say that when you trade from this broker. So you are referring client to this broker. This is known as referral. And for this referral, you are charging a fee from the brokerage house. This is referral fee. So referral fee is allowed, you can do it. But when you are doing it, you should disclose it to client. You should disclose it that I am referring to you this broker, and against that I am taking a referral fee. All types of considerations and their nature must be disclosed. Allow employer and clients to evaluate full cost of service and potential partiality through disclosures. Example: which of the following statements is the stated purpose of disclosure in standard 6C referral fee? Disclosure will allow client to request discounted service fee. No, disclosure will help client evaluate any possible partiality shown in recommendation of service. Client will know that this advisor might be biased. So based on that, then client can decide whether he wants to go to this broker or not. B is the answer. Last standard is responsibilities as a CFA Institute member or candidate. And there are two sub-standards: conduct as members and candidates in CFA program and reference to CFA Institute, CFA designation and CFA program. So conduct as members and candidates in CFA program, remember you should not cheat, you should not disregard the rules and policies, you should not provide confidential information on exam to the candidates or the public. You should not disregard or attempt to circumvent security measures. You should not improperly use CFA designation. You should not improperly use association with CFA Institute. You should not improperly misrepresent information. So let's say that there is a, what is providing confidential program or exam information to candidate. So let's say you just took an exam and on that exam you saw some questions. So you cannot tell others about those questions, that what were the questions on the exam. You cannot discuss exam questions outside the exam or after the exam. Secondly, when you are mentioning CFA designation, there are some uses or some ways of mentioning it that we will learn shortly. You should only use it in those with those particular methods and in those particular ways, and not anything other than that. Confidential program information is specific details of questions appearing on exam and broad topical areas and formulas tested or not tested on the exam. This is confidential and this should not be shared with anyone. Additional CFA program restrictions: questions appearing on the exam, deliberation related to exam process, information related to scoring of question. So if you are an examiner or someone, you should not disclose any such information. Expressing an opinion. So you can give your opinion, you can express your concerns against CFA Institute or the exam, but you should not do anything which reflects unethically on your part. So members and candidates are free to disagree and express their disagreement with CFA Institute on its policies, procedures, or positions taken by organization. When expressing a personal opinion, a candidate is prohibited from disclosing content-specific information, including any exam question and information as to subject matter covered or not covered in exam. So you can say that exam was, you found exam to be difficult, you found exam to be easier, but you cannot say that you found these questions which were difficult. Park is very frustrated after taking her level 2 exam. While she was studying for the exam, to supplement the curriculum provided, she ordered and used study material from third-party provider. That is alright, you can have material from other parties. Park believes the additional material focused her attention on specific topic areas that were not tested while ignoring other areas. She posed the following statement on provider's discussion board. I am very dissatisfied with your firm's CFA program level 2 material. She can be dissatisfied, she can post it. I found the exam extremely difficult. She can find it difficult or easy. And myself unprepared for specific questions after using your product. She can be unprepared. How could your service provide such limited instructional sources on the analysis of inventories and taxes when the exam had multiple questions about them? So now she has disclosed that exam had multiple questions on these two topics, so this is a violation. So violated standards by providing specific information. Violated standards by providing her opinion on difficulty? No. Violated standards by purchasing third-party material? No. Violated standards? Why? By providing specific information on topics tested on exam. And last substandard in the last standard is reference to CFA Institute, CFA designation and CFA program. Do not make guarantees tied to CFA designation. So you cannot say that I will give you a higher return because I am a CFA charter holder. You cannot say that I am better than other portfolio managers because I hold CFA designation. That is violation of standard. But you can say that during this CFA study, my skills have improved. Why? Because I learned portfolio management, I learned this, so my skills have improved. But you cannot say that I am more competent than others. You cannot say that I am best one to do it, I am most competent. You cannot say that I will give you higher return in future. CFA Institute membership. So for membership, you need to pay annual dues. So as long as you are paying the annual fee, you remain to be an active member. If you haven't paid the fee, you will turn to be an inactive member. So if you have turned inactive, you cannot claim yourself to be an active member until and unless you renew your membership by paying the fee. So you can refer to the years when your membership was active, but you cannot say that I am currently a member. You can say I was a member in the past, but you cannot say I am a member. Using designation, do not misrepresent or exaggerate the meaning of designation. So you cannot say that this is the best designation which I have, so I am better than others. Referring to candidacy, you can refer to your participation in program. You should not imply that you have achieved any partial designation. So for example, you cannot say I am CFA level 1. There is nothing like CFA level 1. You cannot say I am CFA level 2, I am CFA level 3. There is nothing like that. You can say I have passed level 1 exam, I have passed CFA level 2 exam, I have passed CFA level 3 exam, but there is nothing like being CFA level 1. You can only be a CFA charter holder or nothing. Otherwise, you will say I have passed this exam. You can say you are a level 2 candidate, level 1 candidate, level 3 candidate, but you cannot say you are level 1 or you are level 2. The person's application for registration in the CFA program has been, so if a person's registration has been accepted, then he or she becomes a candidate. So anyone who has registered for exam is also a candidate. Proper usage of CFA marks. So upon obtaining CFA charter from CFA Institute, charter holders are given the right to use CFA marks, including, you can write it like this, Chartered Financial Analyst, CFA, and the CFA logo. Some permitted ways of using this are mentioned below. So you can use it in these ways. You can say I am a CFA charter holder. You cannot say I am a CFA. There is nothing like being CFA. You can be CFA institute member. You can be CFA charter holder. Earned right to use chartered financial analyst designation. When you write it with your name, you write it like this: CFA, comma CFA or comma chartered financial analyst. Or you can say I am a level 1 candidate in the CFA program. Or you can say I passed level 1 of the CFA examination. I passed 3 levels of CFA program. CFA 2009, CFA Institute. You can write it in these particular ways. Remember, for example, if you passed all 3 exams in first attempt, you can say that I passed all 3 exams in the first attempt. But you cannot say that I am better because I have passed all 3 in first attempt. You can just go through it. These are correct ways of using the designation. These are incorrect ways. You cannot say CFAs. You cannot say he is a chartered financial analyst. You can say he is a CFA charter holder. You cannot put full stop C.F.A. You cannot write it in small letters. You cannot say CFA type portfolio manager, nothing like this. CFA equivalent program, nothing like this. You cannot do dash CFA. You cannot say chartered financial analyst Inc. You cannot bold this with the name. So all these are incorrect. And more examples of correct references and incorrect or improper references. So you can just go through it. Example: Rule has worked as a portfolio manager for a large investment management firm for past 10 years. Rule earned his CFA charter last year and has decided to open his own investment management firm. After leaving his current employer, Rule creates some marketing material for his new firm. He states in the material, in earning the CFA charter, a highly regarded credential in the investment management industry, both are correct, I further enhance the portfolio management skills, that is correct, during my professional career. While completing the examination process in 3 consecutive years, he can mention it, I consistently receive the highest possible scores on the topics of this and this. This is incorrect because scores are not provided. You never know if your score is highest or not, highest possible or not. So this is a violation. Violated standard, yes. By stating that he completed the exams in 3 consecutive years, no. Violated standards, yes. By stating that he received the highest scores in topics, yes, this is a violation. Quinn sat for level 3 exam this past weekend. He updates his resume with the following statement. In finishing the CFA program, he hasn't finished as yet. I improved my skills related to researching. His result is still awaiting, so he hasn't finished it, so he cannot mention it. I improved my skills related to researching investments and managing portfolios. This can be true. I will be eligible for CFA charter upon completion of required work experience. So in order to get charter, you first need to pass 3 exams and then you need 4-year experience. He took the exam last week, means he hasn't received the result as yet. So he doesn't know if he has passed the level 3 or not. So he cannot say that he will get the charter after 4 years of experience because he does not know if he has passed it or not. So violated, yes. By claiming to improve skills, no. Violated, yes. By incorrectly stating that he is eligible, yes. So B is the answer. This is it about the reading.